Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Welcome if you're new. I am in a bit of a different setup today because I'm trying out a different area. The only downside to this new setup is the absence of my cat Leo, who is currently cleaning himself after a good hearty meal. All right, so I have honestly been spending all of my spare time working on my Julian Assange video. There's a lot of information that goes into that case. To make sure that I don't completely disappear off the face of YouTube until that video is ready, I thought I'd make this video, which has been requested by a few people since the information leaked, I think last week. All credit to Jax and Brian McPherson from Incredibly Average for breaking this news technically and being the first to share this email from Adam Waldman to the group of lawyers who represented Johnny in Virginia, including Benjamin Chu and Camille Vasquez. As you can see from the date in the email, this was sent from Adam on the 11th of November 2019. Now, Josh Drew, one of Amber's witnesses and her ex-best friend's ex-husband, a lot of exes going on in this circle of people, was deposed 8 days after this phone call or interview that Adam Waldman references in the email. Now, for starters, this email never made it into evidence in Virginia. We'll get into why I think that is in a second, but first let's have a look at it and its relevance to the proceedings. So Adam says, I have interviewed Drew. Here are the key points from that call. Rocky and Amber's sworn stories that she was summoned by an 807 text to come help her with a berserk Johnny was, quote, a lie. Rocky was hiding in Penthouse 5 all along, almost certainly in the coat closet by the front door, which explains both the security guard testimony that she never came past them and was already in the apartment when they entered, and Johnny's that Rocky just came out of nowhere past his right shoulder to go stand with Amber. Super important fact, and I hope he'll repeat it. This makes the whole thing a setup and discredits both their testimony. Now, I will jump to the last point that Adam makes because it is related to Amber's counterclaim before I briefly look into the middle points that are mentioned in the email as well. There was a long gap between Johnny's departure and calling the cops, perhaps an hour or more. He couldn't be precise. During that time, they all sat together in Penthouse 3 on the phone with Samantha Spector, her divorce lawyer, who was guiding them to writing it all down to get their story straight before calling the cops. Now, I'm fairly certain you can already see how relevant this is to the second statement of Amber's counterclaim, which was found to be defamatory unanimously by the jury. So if you'll remember, the statement that was found to be defamatory, as we discussed, I believe in the last video, was essentially that Amber and her friends, so her co-conspirators, set up the apartment, set up Penthouse 3 and started staging things before calling the second set of police officers who responded and arrived at the scene. And as we all know, this particular statement was found to be defamatory and made with actual malice. Now, this email here was not admitted into evidence. I don't know why. I can only speculate that it was a hearsay document, and it was essentially hearsay within hearsay. The email itself is hearsay because it's an out-of-court statement, and then it contained words that were made by Josh Drew to Adam Waldman. And then Adam wrote down these words and conveyed them to Johnny's legal team. So it's pretty much double hearsay. This document, as far as we know from the deposition footage that we saw during the trial of Josh Drew, was not brought to his attention as a prior inconsistent statement, for example. And this is because of what I just said. Adam wrote down what Josh told him. So if Josh Drew had made a prior witness statement or a deposition where he stated in that deposition or statement that Rocky was indeed hiding in Penthouse 5, it could have been used and it could have been brought up in Josh Drew's deposition, and it could have been brought to the attention of the jury. I have heard multiple times from both sides actually now that Judge Azcarate was quite strict with hearsay. She was very rigid about it and was quite firm on the matter. But imagine if this email had been admissible. I honestly think it would have been that missing piece, or it would have satisfied the jury that Adam Waldman or Johnny Depp, because we're talking about agency, made that statement without actual malice. So either knowing that it's true or having a reasonable basis to believe that the staging allegation was true. And that would have meant that Amber would not have been successful at all in her counterclaim. So yes, here's an example of how strict and rigid the rules of evidence are, specifically hearsay, and how you can have really cogent, compelling evidence to support your case, but because it was hearsay, it just couldn't make it in. I don't presume to know more than Judge Ascarate, of course, so I'm not going to say that she made the wrong decision. It does look like hearsay to me, and as I said, double hearsay, hearsay within hearsay. I don't see how this email in particular, not the evidence within it, but this particular document would have been admissible. What would have been admissible is if Adam took a declaration from Josh Drew, so a witness statement, where he did say Raquel was in Penthouse 5 waiting. We all know the deposition footage was edited pretty much for everyone. Both teams would object to certain things that were said in that deposition, and then they would be edited accordingly. So we never know. Josh may have been confronted with that in the original deposition clip, but we just never got to see it. And by the way, I looked through my notes that I was making every day as I watched the trial, and Josh did say in that deposition that Raquel was with him and that she was summoned by a text message from Amber. So what was said to be a lie in the email is what Josh ended up going with. Whether this is going to be used in a potential appeal, which by the way, I have to make it very clear that at this point, we don't know if Johnny's going to appeal. Yes, Exhibit A was attached to the final judgment, which listed all of Johnny's objections. But as I said in the last video, it's not necessarily a definite sign of an appeal. As for the rest of the email, because it's too interesting not to talk about, let's have a look at that as well. And remember, everything we're going to read out is from the interview that Adam conducted with Josh Drew. In point 2, Josh told Adam that Amber was sleeping with Musk all the week after the 21st, obviously not on Franco's night, the 22nd. And this aligns actually with Josh Drew's deposition, where I've seen footage of him stating that Amber had a threesome with Cara Delevingne, I think is her name, and Elon Musk. And then of course we have the making out with Cara Delevingne in the ECB elevator, which was exclusively shared to the world by Andy from Popcorn Planet, and it all links up. Now, of course, none of this evidence was used in trial. In point 3, he says Amber and Musk were into some kinky things together. He didn't elaborate. Now, this is relevant to Trinity Esparza's witness statement, which I went through with a fine-tooth comb 2 years ago. And honestly, I was waiting for her to be called as a witness or for them to bring up a deposition of hers, but they didn't. And it's very confusing as to why. I'm sure they have their reasons. Maybe she's unavailable. But I remember that she stated in her witness statement that around June, July 2016, so a month, if not more, since Amber last saw Johnny, and while Johnny was in Europe, nonetheless, Trinity, when Amber came down to the reception area, saw that Amber had a number of bruises. I do have to say that this wouldn't have been used to argue that any bruises Amber had in the week leading up to the 27th of May 2016 were caused by Elon rather than Johnny. Because let's remember, the whole argument was she had no bruises. All of the witnesses, the ECB staff, the police officers, Isaac Baruch, even her own makeup artist at the time, Melanie Iglesias, they all testified that she didn't have bruises. At most, this evidence is relevant to her cheating on Johnny and that she's a liar, because she did testify that she did not have an affair with anyone during their marriage. Very briefly, I think I was trying to make a point earlier that I never did, which is, if Johnny appeals, can he use this? I'm not 100% certain what the rules are with regards to appeals and fresh or new evidence in Virginia. I do know in Australia and the UK, you can introduce fresh or new evidence if there are good reasons to do so. It's in the interest of justice. The evidence wasn't available or known to the party that wishes to adduce it during the trial. There are ways to get new evidence in on appeal, but it is done rarely because usually appeals are restricted to reviewing what happened during the trial, what was available to the fact finder during the trial. So Johnny can't really introduce this email, for example, and say the jury made the wrong decision because the jury didn't have access to this piece of evidence. All right, I think that's it for this video. I hope it answered your questions as to why this document never made it in. and whether it will in the future, we always have to remember that despite all of this new information coming out where we go, oh, you know, why wasn't it used? We have to remember that Johnny was victorious and is victorious and is currently living his life, living the life with Jeff Beck performing all over Europe. So he's a winner, and I guess we'll keep our eyes peeled for her appeal at least. All right, I'm gonna get back to researching my video for Julian Assange. And once that video is out, because I really want to get it out soon, I will then start covering the Rocky Brooks versus Johnny Depp personal injury case that is upcoming, which they could settle out of court, by the way, but so far there hasn't been any indication of that happening. Thank you all so much. Leo's sleeping in my usual spot and sends you his regards. Thank you again for tuning in. If you liked the video, please go ahead and like it and subscribe if you haven't, so you can watch more content in the future and support the channel. Thank you again. Take care. I'll catch you next time.